1486 to 1689 Reformation and Restoration period. 1486, Henry VII, Tudor, married Elizabeth of York, uniting houses of York and Lancaster. 1487, Battle of Stoke Field, in final engagement of the Wars of the Roses, Henry VII, defeats Yorkist army led by Lambert Simnel, who was impersonating Edward, the nephew of Edward IV, the only plausible royal alternative to Henry, who was confined in the Tower of London. 1496, Henry VII joins the Holy League, commercial treaty between England and Netherlands. 1497, John Cabot discovers Newfoundland. 1502, Margaret, daughter of Henry VII, marries James IV of Scotland. 1509, Henry VIII, becomes king. 1513, Battle of Flodden Field, fought at Flodden Edge, Northumberland, in which invading Scots are defeated by the English under their commander, 70-year-old Thomas Howard, Earl of Surrey. James IV of Scotland is killed. 1515, Thomas Wolsey, Archbishop of York, is made Lord Chancellor of England and Cardinal. 1517, the Protestant Reformation begins. Martin Luther nails his 95 Theses against the Catholic practice of selling indulgences, on the church door at Wittenberg. 1520, Field of Cloth of Gold, François I of France meets Henry VIII but fails to gain his support against Holy Roman Emperor Charles V. 1521, Henry VIII receives the title Defender of the Faith from Pope Leo X for his opposition to Luther. 1529, Henry VIII dismisses Lord Chancellor Thomas Wolsey for failing to obtain the Pope's consent to his divorce from Catherine of Aragon. Sir Thomas More appointed Lord Chancellor. Henry VIII summons the Reformation Parliament and begins to cut the ties with the Church of Rome. 1530, Thomas Wolsey dies. 1532, Sir Thomas More resigns over the question of Henry VIII's divorce. 1533, Henry VIII marries Anne Boleyn and is excommunicated by Pope Clement VII. Thomas Cranmer appointed Archbishop of Canterbury. 1534, Act of Supremacy, Henry VIII declared supreme head of the Church of England. 1535, Sir Thomas More is beheaded in Tower of London for failing to take the oath of supremacy. 1536, Anne Boleyn is beheaded. Henry VIII marries Jane Seymour. Dissolution of monasteries in England begins under the direction of Thomas Cromwell, completed in 1539. 1537, Jane Seymour dies after the birth of a son, the future Edward VI. 1539, dissolution of Glastonbury Abbey, buildings torched and looted by King's men. Abbot Richard Whiting is executed by hanging atop Glastonbury Tor. 1540, Henry VIII marries Anne of Cleves following negotiations by Thomas Cromwell. Henry divorces Anne of Cleves and marries Catherine Howard. Thomas Cromwell executed on charge of treason. 1542, Catherine Howard is executed. 1543, Henry VIII marries Catherine Parr. Alliance between Henry and Charles V, Holy Roman Emperor, against Scotland and France. 1544, Henry VIII and Charles V invade France. 1547, Edward VI, King of England, Duke of Somerset acts as protector. 1549, introduction of uniform Protestant service in England based on Edward VI's Book of Common Prayer. 1550, fall of Duke of Somerset. Duke of Northumberland succeeds as protector. 1551, Archbishop Cranmer publishes 42 Articles of Religion. 1553, on death of Edward VI, Lady Jane Grey proclaimed Queen of England by Duke of Northumberland. Her reign lasts 9 days. Mary I, daughter of Henry VIII and Catherine of Aragon, Queen of England, to 1558. Restoration of Roman Catholic bishops in England, 1554, execution of Lady Jane Grey, 1555, England returns to Roman Catholicism, Protestants are persecuted and about 300, including Cranmer, are burned at the stake, 1558, England loses Calais, last English possession in France, death of Mary I, Elizabeth I, daughter of Henriette and Anne Boleyn, becomes Queen, repeal of Catholic legislation in England, 1560, Treaty of Berwick between Elizabeth I and Scottish reformers, Treaty of Edinburgh among England, France, and Scotland, 1563, the 39 Articles, which complete establishment of the Anglican Church, 1564. Peace of Troyes between England and France, 1567, murder of Lord Darnley, husband of Mary Queen of Scots, probably by Earl of Bothwell. Mary Queen of Scots marries Bothwell, is imprisoned, and forced to abdicate. James Vi, King of Scotland, 1568, Mary Queen of Scots escapes to England and is imprisoned by Elizabeth I at Fotheringay Castle. 1577, alliance between England and Netherlands, Francis Drake sails around the world, to 1580, 1584, William of Orange is murdered and England sends aid to the Netherlands, 1586 expedition of Sir Francis Drake to the West Indies, conspiracy against Elizabeth I involving Mary Queen of Scots. 1587, execution of Mary Queen of Scots, England at war with Spain, Drake destroys Spanish fleet at Cadiz, 1588, the Spanish Armada is defeated by the English fleet under Lord Howard of Effingham, Sir Francis Drake, and Sir John Hawkins. War between Spain and England continues until 1603, 1597. Irish rebellion under Hugh O'Neill, Earl of Tyrone, finally put down 1601, 1600, Elizabeth I grants charter to East India Company, 1601, Elizabethan poor law charges the parishes with providing for the needy, Essex attempts rebellion, and is executed, 1603, Elizabeth dies. James VI of Scotland becomes James I of England, 1604, Hampton Court Conference, no relaxation by the Church towards Puritans, James bans Jesuits, England and Spain make peace, 1605, Gunpowder Plot, Guy Fawkes and other Roman Catholic conspirators fail in attempt to blow up Parliament and James I. 1607. Parliament rejects proposals for union between England and Scotland. Colony of Virginia is founded at Jamestown by John Smith. Henry Hudson begins voyage to eastern Greenland and Hudson River. 1610, Hudson Bay discovered. 1611, James I's authorized version, King James Version, of the Bible is completed. English and Scottish Protestant colonists settle in Ulster. 1614, James I dissolves the addled Parliament which has failed to pass any legislation. 1618, 30 Years' War begins, lasts until 1648. 1620, Pilgrims land at Plymouth Rock on Cape Cod, Massachusetts, in the Mayflower, found New Plymouth. 1622, James I dissolves Parliament for asserting its right to debate foreign affairs. 1624, alliance between James I and France. Parliament votes for war against Spain. Virginia becomes Crown Colony. 1625, Charles I, King of England, to 1649, Charles I marries Henrietta Maria, sister of Louis XIII of France, dissolves Parliament which fails to vote him money. 1628, Petition of Right, Charles I forced to accept Parliament's statement of civil rights in return for finances. 1629, Charles I dissolves Parliament and rules personally until 1640. 1630, England makes peace with France and Spain. 1639, First Bishops' War between Charles I and the Scottish Church, ends with pacification of Dance. 1640, Charles I summons the Short Parliament, dissolved for refusal to grant money. Second Bishops' War, ends with Treaty of Ripon. The Long Parliament begins. 1641, Triennial Act requires Parliament to be summoned every 3 years. Star Chamber and High Commission abolished by Parliament. Catholics in Ireland revolt, some 30,000 Protestants massacred. Grand Remonstrance of Parliament to Charles I. 1642, Charles I fails in attempt to arrest 5 members of Parliament and rejects Parliament's 19 propositions. Civil War, until 1645, begins with Battle of Edge Hill between Cavaliers, Royalists, and Roundheads, Parliamentarians. 1643, Solemn League and Covenant is signed by Parliament. 1644, Battle of Marston Moor, Oliver Cromwell defeats Prince Rupert. 1645, Formation of Cromwell's new model army, Battle of Naseby, Charles I defeated by parliamentary forces. 1646, Charles I surrenders to the Scots. 1647, Scots surrender Charles I to Parliament. He escapes to the Isle of Wight, makes secret treaty with Scots. 1648, Scots invade England and are defeated by Cromwell at Battle of Preston. Pride's Purge, Presbyterians expelled from Parliament, known as the Rump Parliament. Treaty of Westphalia ends 30 Years' War. 1649, Charles I is tried and executed. The Commonwealth, in which England is governed as a republic, is established and lasts until 1660. Cromwell harshly suppresses Catholic rebellions in Ireland. 1650, Charles II lands in Scotland, is proclaimed king. 1651, Charles II invades England and is defeated at Battle of Worcester. Charles escapes to France. First Navigation Act, England gains virtual monopoly of foreign trade. 1653, Oliver Cromwell dissolves the Rump and becomes Lord Protector. 1654, Treaty of Westminster between England and Dutch Republic. 1655, England divided into 12 military districts by Cromwell, seizes Jamaica from Spain. 1656, War with Spain, until 1659. 1658, Oliver Cromwell dies, succeeded as Lord Protector by son Richard. Battle of the Dunes, England and France defeat Spain, England gains Dunkirk. 1659, Richard Cromwell forced to resign by the army, Rump Parliament restored. 1660, Convention Parliament restores Charles II to throne. 1661, Clarendon Code, Cavalier Parliament of Charles II passes series of repressive laws against nonconformists. English acquire Bombay. 1662, Act of Uniformity passed in England. 1664, England seizes New Amsterdam from the Dutch, change name to New York. 1665, Great Plague in London. 1666, Great Fire of London. 1667, Dutch fleet defeats the English in Medway River. Treaties of Breda among Netherlands, England, France, and Denmark. 1668, Triple Alliance of England, Netherlands, and Sweden against France. 1670, Secret Treaty of Dover between Charles II of England and Louis XIV of France to restore Roman Catholicism to England. Hudson's Bay Company founded. 1672, Third Anglo-Dutch War, Until 1674, William III, of Orange, becomes ruler of Netherlands. 1673, Test Act aims to deprive English Roman Catholics and nonconformists of public office. 1674, Treaty of Westminster between England and the Netherlands. 1677, William III, ruler of the Netherlands, marries Mary, daughter of James, Duke of York, heir to the English throne. 1678, Popish plot in England. Titus Oates falsely alleges a Catholic plot to murder Charles II. 1679, Act of Habeas Corpus passed, forbidding imprisonment without trial. Parliament's Bill of Exclusion against the Roman Catholic Duke of York blocked by Charles II. Parliament dismissed. Charles II rejects petitions calling for a new parliament. Petitioners become known as Whigs, their opponents, Royalists, known as Tories. 1681, Whigs reintroduce Exclusion Bill. Charles II dissolves Parliament. 1685, James II of England and 7 of Scotland, to 1688, rebellion by Charles II's illegitimate son, the Duke of Monmouth, against James II is put down. 1686, James II disregards Test Act, Roman Catholics appointed to public office. 1687, James II issues Declaration of Liberty of Conscience, extends toleration to all religions. 1688, England's Glorious Revolution. William III of Orange is invited to save England from Roman Catholicism, lands in England. James II flees to France. 1689, Convention Parliament issues Bill of Rights, establishes a constitutional monarchy in Britain, bars Roman Catholics from the throne. William III and Mary II become joint monarchs of England and Scotland. To 1694, Toleration Act grants freedom of worship to dissenters in England. Grand Alliance of the League of Augsburg, England, and the Netherlands.